right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Digital brands are opening stores again, but the real challenge isn't the shop fit out, it's the operations behind it. As Arms of Eve rolls out a new wave of flagship stores and Oz Hair and Beauty continues refining the mechanics of modern retail, this session explores what it's really like to what it really takes to make e-commerce and stores work as one business. So everybody, please welcome Ryan Martin, founder of Remarkable Digital, Aaron Langer, CEO of Arms of Eve, and Guy Nappa, business owner of Oz Hair and Beauty.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for the kind introduction. And I genuinely think that these two superstars to my left are the absolute talk of the retail fest. So everyone in this room, a very intelligent bunch for making the time to come and listen to these two gentlemen have a talk. So we'll get straight into it. Guy, number one ranked person in e-commerce 2025 and 2026. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Thanks for embarrassing me.
Mate, my first question to you is this talk is all about e-commerce and then expanding into bricks and mortar retail. You built such an impressive e-commerce business starting from eBay, I believe it was. Why would you put yourself through the pain and torture and expense of having a really good e-commerce play to then going into physical retail?
Yeah, so for those who don't know about the business, our parents were hairdressers. So my dad started off with a corner shop hair salon almost 40 years ago. And 12 years ago, my older brother started selling their products on eBay as a bit of a side gig. Didn't have to pay for any of their stock until he sold it. And that allowed him to quickly scale. So for the first 12 years of the business, we were a pure play online retailer. Because we got in relatively early, we moved on Shopify about 10 years ago, invested heavily in digital ads. It gave us a very big head start before the wider kind of community hit on that e-com was going to be as big as it is today. Then around COVID, we got minority investment through some strategic partners. And one of those partners is the CEO of Accent Group. They've got 900 stores. One of the other investors is BBRC. They've got Lavisa, Best and Less. And when they kind of came to us, they said, look, we think after COVID, everything's going to return back to normal. Stores are going to be much more important to the whole ecosystem. And, we listened and we definitely saw it. Online marketing became a lot more expensive. Freight became a lot more expensive. So it's a lot harder to grow just a pure play online, especially as a retailer, because we don't really have our own brands. So in the last 3 years, we've made a bit of a transition away from just pure play to physical. So we've opened up 30 stores. We did 3 in 1 year, 9 the other. The last year we doubled down, did 15. And our plans to get to around 50 the middle of next year. So it's been quite the journey, and it's been definitely very fun.
Yeah, fantastic. That's incredible growth. I'll throw to you, Aaron. So Aaron, founder or co-founder and now CEO of Arms of Eve. Arms of Eve, for those who don't know, you could probably explain it better than me, but started out selling jewellery to markets, local Sydney markets, and they've now opened up 9 stores with plans to expand even further. So again, elite operators and an elite business. But we spoke earlier and you were reluctant to go to physical retail. You were happy just being completely e-commerce. So can you take us through your journey and what changed your mind?
Yeah. Our journey's similar and different in a lot of ways. We did start in the markets, but the intention was to build an e-com brand. So we built our tech stack really early. We were on Shopify from the beginning. We had lived in LA for 10 years, so we lived through the big e-com boom there, and I just was like dead set on like, this is the future. And I was one of those people that said retail's dying or it's dead. And COVID struck, and interestingly enough, when we say reluctantly opened, my wife is the founder and designer, and she always wins. So we opened up a shop like at the tail end of like lockdown in Sydney, and it was a good risk. It was a cheap risk, and it was an experiment. She wanted to get back into like the face of customers and really use it as kind of a launch pad to experiment with other things. And plus, because we're a single brand and not selling multi-brands, it was a really important way to sort of physically experience our brand in a 360 environment. So the physical store just legitimized us, I think, a lot more in the marketplace. I think it created a lot more brand trust, even for our online customers, even all over Australia or the world, knowing that we had a store. We weren't just another one of those like pop-up Instagram, TikTok brands. So yeah, I mean, it was scary, the retail thing, but it was a really good, inexpensive, cheap experiment that we ended up launching our second store soon after that. And then we had plans for a third store. And then as we were continuing to grow, just a lot more knowledge gained, a lot of mistakes made, which I'm sure we'll talk about further. But it's turned into a really good thing because there is this halo effect. It has increased our online sales. Our online keeps growing. Our stores, we keep on building brand awareness all over the country as we open more stores. So it's been a really good thing.
Yeah, fantastic. And before we move on to kind of the next pillar around people, I just want to speak about that with yourself, guys. So what did you notice about opening up e-commerce store? So what did you notice about bricks and mortar stores and how that impacted your e-commerce stores? Did you have to spend more on ads? Did you have to spend less? How did you use those stores to really grow your e-commerce business as well as bricks and mortar?
Yeah, so I think we had the same hesitation that we were going to cannibalize our sales, or it's actually going to be quite expensive to run, and we're not going to see any benefit to the online. But what we quickly found there's a halo effect, that the growth in our online in the areas where we have a shop is a lot higher than our growth relative to everywhere else. And the reason being, the stores essentially act as a billboard. And one of the benefits of that as well is, being a low margin business, we're trying to really scale back our ads. And we've been able to do so because our stores are acting as a marketing channel for us. Where we put the cost of rent into our customer acquisition cost, it allows us to kind of view the rent as a marketing channel. So it's been something that we didn't expect that to happen. We did hear about the online growth in the regions. It's interesting to actually see that play out. But being able to actually pull back on marketing has been a really key learning for us.
I wish I could say the same. Yeah. We're a completely different business. So we're a single brand. Rents are high, fit outs are expensive, but we're still spending more on ads. Like we're still like acquiring customers. We're still very much top of funnel, but the stores and online really sort of helps with that retention factor. And again, it just builds trust when people know that like they're having a good experience. They're going into a store. And then they shop online. They have a very similar experience, or vice versa. So it's the omni-channel really feeds one another in both directions. So yeah.
Perfect. Last sort of question before we move on, but I probably said that last time as well. Is there, the benefit of 2020 hindsight, is there one or two things that you could, I'll start with you, Aaron, but then go to you, Guy. Is there one or two things that you would have done differently, knowing what you know now, that might be able to perhaps help people listening in this audience that are thinking of going into bricks and mortar?
Yeah, I think it's hard to name a few. I mean, I wrote down a few notes, but point of sale systems is something to really think about. Like, when you think about the idea of opening a store, you don't necessarily think about stuff like that, but that's important. How your inventory works, how it flows back into your system. We'll talk about tech stacks and stuff, but the system and how that works is really important. So it's more than just making a store look good, making a store look pretty, and getting those sales come in. It's like how that functionality works. How do you restock and replenish stores? How often? What's that communication to store look like? there's the operational side of things, which is tricky. There's also like the fit out tech aspect of like, what do we need where POS counters need these little printers? Does that drawer open up with that printer? Like all these things that you design and they look great, but are they functional? And like we've learned a lot along the way. I was telling these guys our first point of sale counter was an old bar that I bought on eBay in our first store and literally chopped it off and my kids painted it. I mean, that's how the first store experiment went down. But we had to start somewhere.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And what about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely agree on the tech stack. I know we'll come to that. Making sure you have the right one set up is really important. I guess the biggest learning and like maybe mistake we had from head office, we didn't realize how bad of communicators we were. When you're in the office with everyone, like everyone understands how each other works. But all of a sudden, you go from like 100 staff to 150. Now we've got 450 staff. Like the feedback loop needs to be very clear. And when you're giving direction, like top down, and you're expecting your regional managers to understand, or just your casual worker on a Saturday, you really need to just make everything so simple. And it's not their job to understand it. It's like our jobs as leaders to make it very, very clear. And like, we think it took us about a year in getting that refinement right. It's not like online where you make a mistake, you can just like switch it off the website. If you send the wrong signage, the wrong measurements, it's like a week process and it's just a headache. So all the comms and understanding that you need to be a lot more detailed, because if you make a mistake, it costs a lot more. Compounds on how many stores you have. Yeah, I reckon 12 months just to really refine how we communicated all our work.
Okay. Yeah, nice. And just again on that same similar kind of thought process, you're going to open up to 50 stores in the coming sort of year or so. How do you ensure that the culture, that user experience and that customer journey gets from one store to e-commerce to the next? How do you ensure that you can nail that best you can?
Yeah, it's very tough, and you know, I would hope to think that when everyone goes to an Oz Hair and Beauty store, they have a really good experience, something I'd be proud of. But at the end of the day, it depends on who the person is at the time, and you know, just how their mood is, customer or even team member. And like our job as leaders is to essentially make sure that we bring on the right people to the team. And that doesn't just mean the casuals or the actual team members. It means the people who are running those teams and leading those teams. So we made a real conscious effort that the person who's running our retail side of the business, she's hands-on on the tools. She understands it. She's not too big to not get involved. And I think that resonates with the entire team and her regionals. And you know, we put a lot of trust in her and, you know, HR and the regionals in making sure that they're bringing on the right people to represent the brand. Because at the end of the day, that they're a bigger advertisement to our business than anything we do. If you have a really good experience, it will last. So when we onboard and when we hire, we do it with such rigor and such detail, because one mistake there like can really have really bad reputation. So getting it right from the start and then making sure they're onboarded and they have regular reviews and you're consistently looking at metrics keeps you honest, it keeps them honest. At the end of the day, you can't scale the business if you've got really bad service.
It's totally the people factor, which is the most challenging. Like you open up one store, two store, and they're like in sort of your neighborhood. It's easy. But as Guy says, you know, you start scaling, you start growing, it starts getting much more complex. And so having people that really deeply understand your brand, that are conveying that education piece to everyone else is essential. It's like we've been through pitfalls. We're going through growth right now. I mean, we're about to open our 10th store. We've got 4 in the pipeline. Things are getting a lot more complex. So we're kind of at a nice growth phase. Probably a few steps behind Guy in terms of where they are at. But the Arms of Eve brand needs to be like you need to walk into that store and feel it immediately. And that's what we try to build with each one of our stores. And it's not easy. It's just something that it's all people.
Can I just add to that as well? I think having a really strong feedback loop from like top down to bottom up is really, really important. And your team need to know that when they raise an issue, that it actually gets acted on. There's nothing worse than a business who say, give us feedback, and then they actually get the shits when they don't like the feedback, or they don't do anything with the feedback. That's the quickest way to ruin trust with your team. And I thought we had a really good feedback loop. But then last week I was in one of the stores, and the store manager just had a coffee with her, and she was running through some of the problems. And there was this one issue, because we switched ERP, the order number wasn't appearing on the click and collect labels. Now that's like a really simple issue to fix. Now she's flagged that issue, no one did anything with it. So like I made sure when I got back, I just went into the system and made the changes. Now that's such a small thing to do, but we had 30 stores complaining about this and nothing was getting done. So like, whilst it's an easy thing to fix, I've got to really dive deeper and go, how can 30 stores complain about the one issue and no one actually make a change? If you get your feet off the ball, it's really, or your eye off the ball, then it's, these issues compound.
So someone said to us recently that retail is detail, and it couldn't be truer. We get feedback weekly from our teams. There's a consistent format how they report into us, and even as owners and founders, we read everything, we respond to everything. We read our customer reviews, every single one of them. If there's an issue, we ensure that we're always on top of it, and we're always immediately actioning things. From anything that's in-store tech related, we've got like our chain, to problem with product or problem with service. Like, we are constantly trying to tweak that. We have like a company motto that's called Kaizen, which is like a Japanese thing of small continuous improvement. So we're always in Kaizen. We're always like, how do we make things more efficient? How do we make things better? And we're always, business is always putting out fires, and it's always like, that's an easy fire, guy, like just a tech thing. But if you're not listening to them, it's all BS. It's like, yeah, tell us your problems, but we don't really care. We're not really doing anything about it. That's the quickest way how to destroy culture.
Yeah, I love that retail is detail. That's a really key thing that I'm going to take away from Retail Fest as well. That was great. Just last thing on stores before we get into tech, and then we'll open up for questions. So if anyone's got questions or have a think about now and ask at the end, because we got going for time. We're going pretty good for time. Okay. I want to ask Aaron, you start, and then Guy, you can chime in as well. In terms of like physical locations, how did you choose on what store to open when? And was there a different challenge between opening in a local store in Sydney versus, I see you've got one in WA? Was there some challenges within that?
Yeah, so we're pretty much in every state except South Australia at the moment. Our first few stores were in the Sydney area. We knew what we knew. We don't know what we don't know. And once we started looking like outside of our state, like I was like such an amateur. I was like looking on like commercialrealestate.com. Like I was like, didn't know the areas, didn't know anything, couldn't really see anything, couldn't go there. It was impossible. So we hired a leasing expert, which was really essential in terms of understanding the art of the deal. Like once you start going into, you start signing leases and you start getting lawyers on board, and it just, it just gets more and more complicated. But how do you know what's good, and how do you know what to trust and what to push back on? So in terms of finding the right properties outside that was really helpful. But for us as a brand, and we're still in our first 10 stores, like we're not going to be in every single neighborhood and every single mall and every single city. That's not our plan. We're still want to be like boutique. We don't want to be everywhere to everybody. So for us, it was opening up in like the right sort of locations where similar customers would be shopping, so around similar brands. So opening where, even from like in a mall, like in Chermside in Brisbane, we were like, who's next to us? Who's on that floor? Like all of those details really matter. Signing leases with like, those big centers like Center Group, which is Westfield, or GPT or Vicinity. I find those really cookie cutter and a lot easier. When you go on high streets, you're dealing with like private landlords who are they don't care about your brand. They don't care how well you do. They just want the highest rent that they can get. So it's a different machine to go on some like little street somewhere versus being in a center. But it's all a learning experience, and it's all quite complicated. So we've chosen very carefully. We've been very strategic. We've been looking in our online database, like who are our customers, where do they live, mapping it out. There's a lot of data and science behind, selecting the store.
Fantastic. And yourself, Guy, how do you kind of choose? You're opening, obviously, going towards 50 stores. You're going to be in a lot of locations, but how do you choose the next great location?
Yeah, I think mirror everything you just said. It's so true. You don't know what you don't know. There's a lot of access to data. So they've got the big guns reporting, which is all the shopping centre data, which is very, very important if you're trying to do your models on whether a store's going to work or not. The only thing I'll kind of add is that if our first site didn't work, we wouldn't be at 30 today. And we're lucky we have a strategic board, but you cannot sign a bad lease. If you sign a bad lease, it's too much rent. You're going to have to do too much sales. The economics just don't work. So you really need to make sure whoever you have going to bat for you in the leasing, because we do it externally because it's too much brain power away from the core business. You trust them in full, and you just also keep them honest and sense check, because the impact of signing a bad deal is just astronomical. So it's something you can't really afford to make a mistake on.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. One question that I have before we move on from stores is just around profitability. Is there a certain time frame that you give for a store to be profitable? Do you want it to be profitable from day one or year one, or is it a 3-year plan, or how do the numbers sort of work out for you?
It's different per store, but we tend to see after the first month we'll have an indication on whether this will be a great store or whether it's going to be like a lot of work in trying to turn it around. It's very different across all 30 stores, but the first month is like a good indication.
Wow, so you can tell within a month if this store is going to work or not based on the data.
But yeah, and then like there are other factors like whether you've got a really good store manager, whether you've got the right mix. But you'll find that out. You'll find that out within the first month, and as the data goes, it becomes more accurate.
Okay. Is your experience similar, Aaron? Or?
It does depend. I think like in the big centers, you kind of expect stores to do well faster because they have like the automatic foot traffic. Yeah. But I think like the smaller stores, like the high street stores, it takes a little bit of time. You're new to the neighborhood. We're a newish brand. It takes time for people to discover you, and we're anxious and stressed as soon as the store opens, and we just kind of now have gotten sort of comfortable with that sort of feeling. Some of those stores that took a long time to sort of kick in for us, like Mosman or Armidale in Melbourne, Mosman in Sydney, took a little bit of time. They were both like high streets. The locals needed to get to know us, need to understand what kind of brand we are, and we need to understand what kind of customers they are. So it was a get to know you process. Generally, we want our stores to be profitable from day one. Generally, they are, but I think the forecasting side of the business of like looking 12 months ahead, when we're in that process, you're not sure what that store is going to do in September versus what it's going to do in April. just because there's no past history, and we don't know that we don't know much ourselves. So we're taking kind of good guesses, from year to year. We try to sort of like increase our targets, in a healthy way. But it's a balance. But we do aim for those stores to do well from the start.
Okay.
But it sometimes does take a little bit of time.
Yeah, cool. Have we got questions? Anyone listening to this? Questions from the audience? All right, awesome. Whilst you're asking that question, I just want to touch on tech stack, because everybody's always interested as to what sort of tech stack you guys roll with. So do you want to mention some of the tech that you've found to be instrumental in your growth?
Yeah, so I touched on Shopify before, and I think that's been a real decision that we look back on that was a pivotal moment for the business because of how user-friendly it is. Then they opened up POS. So when we decided that we wanted to do stores, we just turned on a button and legitimately could start doing transactions through the POS. We have an ERP OMS called Seller Cloud, which handles our inventory and our purchasing. And because they've all got open APIs and Shopify is, again, so dev-friendly, we can get our devs to come in and do a lot of the custom work, which allows us to move a lot faster. So I definitely am a big fan of Seller Cloud. And if you're looking at Seller Cloud and Shopify POS, because you can get your own teams to come in and make the changes.
Fantastic.
Our tech stack, like when I drew the map out of what it looked like 5 or 6 years ago, looked like Atari. It was like so basic. It was like an 8-bit video game. And then Ian, our digital operations manager, drew out our newest one, and it's like NASA. It's like there's so much has changed, and we've evolved so much over time. But the building blocks have been Shopify from the beginning. We finally went over to Shopify Plus so reluctantly. They called us. They're like, at your size, you're the only one still not on Shopify Plus. Like, what's going on? And but we finally did that. We didn't start on Shopify POS. I'm not sure why not. I'm not sure. I might have not even known about it. And then we just used Sin7, which is our sort of ERP inventory programs POS, which was, I don't recommend it. But then we did switch over to Shopify POS, and we just got better at what we were doing because it's a one system, so everything just flows much better. And then there's like a lot of middleware. There's a lot of things that have been built to talk to each other. There's so much data that we really want to understand what's important to look at, what's not important to look at. We use a powerful piece of software called Profit Peak that really looks at our SKUs and our profitability. That's been really helpful. But yeah, I mean, we dispatch everything. I mean, we could go into that. Like everything needs to function together.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part of tech stack is functionality.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Question? Yeah.
So just in regards to forecasting and even store locations, all that sort of thing, because they kind of all tie in together, when it comes to considering where you want to open up, do you literally kind of have something in mind, or is it all strictly based on your research, like where your customers are coming from and all of that sort of thing, or do you kind of have an idea of where you want to go? And then I guess the second part of that question is, once you've kind of pinned a location, how do you forecast what that rent needs to be in terms of what your revenue could look like? Are you looking at foot traffic data from Kepler Analytics, all that sort of thing? How does that work?
You want me to jump in first? Okay, so a lot of it is gut in terms of location. Then we verify it through customer postcodes and data. Then we walk it and we actually look at it and we talk to stores in the area. I mean, this is our process. We often sit outside of the area and sit there for a while and just have coffee and just watch. And I just watch and go, oh, there's an Arms of Eve customer. There's an Arms of Eve customer. They're here, and so you kind of go through that process. Then you go through whether it's the centers and they want to sell their spaces, and they want to sell their spaces that are still tenanted, and they're trying to look for more money and trying to see which leases are ending, and that's such a game. And then you look at the high streets and you try to get certain stores and you lose them for whatever reason because someone else bid $2 more than you did. Like what we discovered that we really wanted Noosa. And if you guys been to Noosa, like we landed literally like on a rainy Tuesday, and I was like, perfect. Give me the shittiest weather, not during holiday season. I want to see the worst. And we literally walked up and down Hastings Street talking to every single store. And then we did something even cheekier. We went to like the Sofitel and said, oh, we want to do an event here. Can you tell us about your occupancy rates? We wanted to see how busy Noosa was because we were like, is this just going to be a seasonal thing or is it going to be busy all year round? So that's a pretty extreme example, but we took it pretty seriously.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I think just to add, it's a bit of an art and science. We're very two different brands. I would say ours is more of a convenience shop, and like that plays a part. When doing our models, there's a lot of data available where you can use the kind of sense check. As we've got more stores, we can also compare to existing stores. But there's like a range of different factors. You just need that's where the art comes in. It goes, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to the location or a lot more attention to the demographic in this site over that. But when doing the model, you almost need to say, can this shop work if we have a terrible sales? And like sometimes it won't, and your gut will say still go with it. But if you're unsure about it, then it's like, well, why take the risk?
But I think Guy hit on your second question was like the forecasting element is there is a model that you build. There is like, like rent, employment costs, fit out costs. Like you build everything into this first new baby that you're about to have. And you're like, what do you need to break even? And then what do you need to start making money? And so you sort of like, you model it and then you sort of come up with like this really nice target of this is what revenue should be. And we look at it on a monthly basis for the financial calendar, and then you break it down in the retail world is by retail weeks, and you sort of like map it out. And then you sort of look at your marketing calendar as well, which plays into how sales will do. Like what if you're going to be involved in an Afterpay day, or you're going to be involved in Black Friday, for how long, which days? It's going to be like a month like it is everywhere else. And what does that look like in terms of rent and in terms of staffing? And also, like quieter months, you can roster differently. Like, you don't have to have as many employees on the floor at one point, and you can adjust that. There's different levers to sort of play with throughout, but you definitely have to model it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. We'd love more questions, but I think we're out of time. So yeah, thank you, Aaron, for being so generous with your time and your insights, and same to you, Guy. I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone got a lot out of that one.
Awesome.
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. We could have probably gone for an hour.